Good. Welcome everyone to the City of Evans regularly scheduled City Council meeting for May 7th, 2019. My name is Brian Rudy, the Mayor. I'll call the meeting in order. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Mayor Rudy.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Clark.
Here.
Councilmember Johnson.
Present.
Councilmember Spear.
Here.
Councilmember Castle.
Here.
Councilmember Neal.
Present.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda, we have a few proclamations, and I will start with the proclamation of proclaiming the week of May 12th, 2018, May 12th through the 18th, 2019, as National Police Week in the city of Evans, Colorado. To recognize National Police Week 2019 and to honor the service and sacrifice of those law enforcement officers killed in the line of duty while protecting our communities and safeguarding our democracy, whereas there are more than 900,000 law enforcement officers serving in communities across the United States, including the dedicated members of the City of Evans, Colorado Police Department. Whereas there have been 61,995 assaults against law enforcement officers in 2017, resulting in approximately 17,902 injuries. And whereas the first recorded death in 1791, more than 20,000 law enforcement officers in the United States have made the ultimate sacrifice and been killed in the line of duty, including one member of the City of Evans, Colorado Police Department. And whereas the names of these dedicated public servants are engraved on the walls of the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial in Washington, D.C., whereas 371 new names of fallen heroes are being added to the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial this spring, including 158 officers killed in 2018 and 171 officers killed in previous years. Whereas the service and sacrifice of all officers killed in the line of duty will be honored during the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund's 30th Annual Candlelight Vigil on the evening of May 13th, 2018. Whereas the Candlelight Vigil is part of the National Police Week, which takes place this year on May 12th through the 18th. Whereas May 15th is designated as Peace Officers Memorial Day in honor of all fallen officers and their families, and the U.S. flag should be flown at half-staff. Therefore, be it resolved that the Mayor and the City Council of the City of Evans do hereby formally designate May 12th through May 18th, 2019 as Police Week in the City of Evans, and publicly salutes the service of law enforcement officers in our community and in communities across the nation. As in testimony whereof, the Mayor of the City of Evans has hereunto subscribed his name and caused the official seal of the City of Evans to be hereunto affixed on this 7th day of May, 2019. Chief Brandt, if you could please come up. Chief, on behalf of the City Council and the citizens of Evans, please pass along our heartfelt thanks to you and your officers for everything you guys do. Please stay safe. Thank you. Okay, next proclamation. National Economic Development Week. Whereas the International Economic Development Council is the largest professional economic development organization dedicated to serving economic developers, and whereas economic development promote economic well-being and quality of life for their communities by creating, retaining, and expanding jobs that facilitate growth, enhance wealth, and provide a sustainable tax base. And whereas economic developers stimulate and incubate entrepreneurialism, I've never got that word right, in order to help establish the next generation of new businesses, which is the hallmark of the American economy. And whereas economic developers are engaged in a wide variety of settings, including rural and urban, local, state, and federal governments, public and private partnerships, chambers of commerce, universities, and a variety of other institutions. And whereas economic developers attract and retain high-quality jobs, develop vibrant communities, and improve the quality of life in their regions. And whereas economic developers work in the City of Evans within the state of Colorado. Now, therefore, I, Brian Rudy, by virtue of the authority vested in me as mayor of the city of Evans, Colorado, do hereby proclaim the week of May 6th through the 11th, 2019, as National Economic Development Week in the city of Evans, and remind individuals of the importance of this community celebration, which supports expanding career opportunities and improving the quality of life. In witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused to be affixed the official seal of the city of Evans this day, 7th of May, 2019. Is there anyone here to receive this proclamation?
There is, Mayor. As you're walking this way, I might briefly introduce the Economic Development Manager, Allison Moding. You'll hear more about Allison toward the end of the meeting, but I'm glad she's here to accept the proclamation.
If you'd like to say anything, you don't have to. All right.
She's walking back. I will make one comment that I will say Evans has shown foresight and has made an investment in economic development that many communities our size have not made. And economic development is long, hard work, and we're very fortunate that council has invested in an expert to help us move things forward in that regard. So thank you, council.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is audience participation. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to address City Council on any item not on the agenda this evening? Please step up to the podium, state your name and address, sir. Thank you for being here.
Grant Hoekstra, 4217 Phlox Lane. 2 weeks ago, I watched the council meeting on the T&V, which is about 50% valuable. I suggest that we would have a second camera so the people at home can see this on split screen when there's something of value up there. I could only get half of the gist of the meeting because I couldn't see the visuals.
Sure.
So if you could make an improvement, that would be it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there anyone, please, ma'am, please step up. Step up to the podium and state your name, please. Thank you.
Good evening. Mayor Rudy, members of the council, Mr. Becklenberg, my name is Carol LeMay. I live at 3601 Ponderosa Court, Unit 12 in the Fox Crossing subdivision. My presence this evening has absolutely nothing to do with any issue on the agenda whatsoever. I am here hopefully to bring attention to an issue that has been at the back of my mind for the last several months. Granted, I live in a condominium community rather than a single-family home, so my property taxes are substantially lower than those that would consider it to be the norm. But when you consider the current monthly wastewater rates of $41.35 a month versus my annual property tax of $38.54, it gives pause for consideration. My question is this: why am I paying more to flush the toilets in my home than I am paying annually for property taxes to live in the city of Evans? There's something definitely wrong with this scenario. Does the city council realize that the city's mill levy has not changed at all since the 2011 division of the city and the fire district here in Evans? Back in 2011, our mill levy was 3.53600, and it has remained at that figure for the last 8 years. This truly frustrates me because as a homeowner living in a condo community, my HOA pays my water bill, but I still contribute on a monthly basis through my dues, which keep going up so we can pay the water bills so the city doesn't turn our water off. Now, I don't know about other members in this audience this evening, but I'm personally willing to pay an extra $100 a year in property taxes if it'll keep the city's general income coming in a manner that is conducive to everybody, rather than being constantly having your utility fees updated annually to a point where you can't afford to keep grass in your front yard anymore. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Is there anyone else in the audience who wishes to address City Council at this time? And now we'll move on. Are there any changes to the agenda?
Under the executive session, Item A will be removed.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
I move to approve the agenda as amended.
I second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda as amended. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Next item, consent agenda. Item A, approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of April 16th, 2019. Item B, consideration of ordinance number 695-19, an ordinance adopting the 2018 edition of the International Fire Code as the City of Evans Fire Code, second reading.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Next item, new business. Item 8. Item A, a public hearing. Consideration of ordinance number 696-19, an ordinance rezoning property referred to generally as the reserve at Crescent Cove, subject to conditions. It's a public hearing, so I will open the public hearing and hear from staff.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, members of the council. This application seeks an approval of a zoning amendment to rezone the property that you stated, Mayor, the reserve at Crescent Cove, generally located south of 32nd Street, east of 29th Avenue and west of Harbor Lane, otherwise known as just west of Sam's Club, from low-intensity commercial to multifamily residential. With that, I will turn it over to our staff, Randy Reedy, our Assistant City Manager, and also Savannah Benedict Welch, our Interim Senior Planner. They will lead the staff presentation, and I also believe we'll have some information from the applicant tonight as well. With that, I'll turn it over to Randy.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Just a few process comments. This is first reading of the ordinance that's before you. We'll have a second reading. It is an ordinance for rezoning. This is an item that did not receive Planning Commission review. Office, we are proceeding to bring this to you without a recommendation of Planning Commission. There is, as you'll hear, a staff recommendation for approval. However, to date, even though we did have the two planned hearings for Planning Commission, there were no members of the public present at either of those to comment for or against this, nor have we received to date any written comments for or against this project either. So you may hear from members of the public this evening, however. So with that, I'll turn it over to Savannah.
Good evening, council member. Savannah Benedict Welch, Senior Planner with City of Evans. Let's see. Is this working? Oh, there we go. Okay. So we have before us a zoning amendment for a property located on the north side of Evans. As Jim and Randy mentioned, the property is located just south of 32nd Street, just to the east of the North Point subdivision, to the north of the Crescent Cove Apartments, and to the west of the Sam's Club. This property is platted as Tract 3 of the Landings subdivision. It contains roughly 17.5 acres, and it is currently vacant. And we're looking at some photos. Okay, so this shows the notice of public hearing. It's on the property. There are also some photos further back in the slides, but we don't really, it's basically just showing vacant property, so we really don't need to see that. In terms of process, before we get to the process part of it, though, I do want to mention that the proposal before us is a zoning amendment to modify the property zoning from C1, low intensity commercial, to R3, multifamily residential, to allow for the development of multifamily uses. As far as the review criteria, so the zoning amendment review criteria is located within Chapter 18 of the municipal code under section 4, 170D. So that's where the review criteria is located if you're interested. As far as notification, we did provide a 21-day referral period to referral agencies, which included the engineering department, the fire district, and a number of other districts such as water, things of that nature. We also did do publication in the Greeley Tribune on April 5th. We did provide certified mail notification to surrounding property owners on April 12th. And we also did this posting with a public notice sign as well. So there were several notification processes that we used for this application. The property is currently zoned C1, as mentioned, and this map here shows the zoning of the current property as well as surrounding zoning. So you'll notice that to the east of the subject property, it is zoned commercial. That contains the Sam's Club. To the south of the property, it's zoned R3, which is the proposed zoning. To the west, it's zoned R1, which includes single-family residential, which certainly makes sense. Also note that to the north, that is City of Greeley zoning, that is also zoned multifamily. So it's surrounded by residential on 3 sides and then commercial on 1 side. In terms of the review criteria, we look at a number of factors. This includes 4 kind of contextual review criteria that we look at. First, we look at whether a need exists for the rezoning. And as the application materials suggest, employment housing is of high demand in this area. And the intent of the rezoning is to expand the existing apartments to the south, certainly within close proximity of the site. The next criterion includes whether the particular parcel of ground is the correct site for the zoning amendment. The site's proximity to a variety of residential densities makes R3 an appropriate zone for the site. In addition, a retail study completed in 2017 that you might be aware of indicates that the 37th Street corridor is a dominant retail corridor for Evans. This property is outside of that retail corridor area. In addition, we look at 3 and 4 back on the previous slide, and that's an or statement. So either there would need to be an error in the original zoning or significant changes in the area. While there doesn't appear to have been an error in the zoning, it does appear that the site is zoned this way due to its proximity to retail on the east side of the site. But due to the property's lack of visibility from a major street, commercial is probably an unlikely use of this location. So in addition to the contextual review criteria on the previous slide, we also look at some additional technical elements such as traffic circulation. Keep in mind that this proposal does not include a formal development proposal. Really, it's just a paper rezoning asking for multifamily zoning rather than commercial zoning. So while there's no formal proposal, staff's initial review of the site indicates that traffic movement would not be impeded by the development. In terms of municipal service costs, it does not appear that a future development would create a service burden on the community. It would be a very similar type of use. Keep in mind that multifamily residential and low-intensity commercial, in terms of traffic, would certainly be similar. It probably would actually provide and create less traffic for a multifamily use rather than retail, and the services would certainly be very similar. In terms of environmental impacts, there is a capped and abandoned oil and gas well on the property. The applicant will be required to provide documentation as part of the site plan review process to show that that the COGCC requirements have been met as part of any future development. And one thing I do want to mention in terms of process, following this rezoning, if they were to get approval for this rezoning, if they do propose a development for site plan review, for multifamily, they would be required to do a site plan review process, which also includes notification to surrounding neighbors. So if there are any concerns, say with traffic or with things like drainage or anything of that nature, the surrounding neighbors will be notified as part of that process too. In terms of the comprehensive plan, we looked at the maps, goals, and policies within the plan. And the proposal is generally consistent with the comprehensive plan, which calls for a mix of housing types. Multifamily uses can also be considered similar and less intense than low-intensity commercial that would generate more daily traffic. And lastly, we look at whether adequate services are available to the site. They do indicate in their application materials that they have adequate services. And one condition of approval for the rezoning is to ensure that they have adequate EQRs available for the site as part of the site plan review process. So with that, staff is recommending approval of the rezoning with 4 conditions as outlined in your packet. If you have any questions, feel free to ask away.
Great, thank you. The applicant here, would they like to give their position? Thank you, sir. Step up to the podium, state your name.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. My name is Brian Williamson. I'm with TST Consulting Engineers. I am a planner and landscape architect for TST. We are here representing the applicant, which is M-Tim Development. They also are the developer of the existing Crescent Cove apartment to the south, or apartment buildings to the south. I think we've kind of covered exactly where this site is. I'll kind of move through. You've seen a fair amount of just the general information there. Again, the surrounding zoning that Savannah covered very well. And then we did show the north Greeley residential high density zoning that's adjacent to the property to the north. One thing that we wanted to touch about was the significant changes warranting that zoning change. Really the commercial, when this was originally zoned, the commercial climate has changed quite a bit, really trending away from those big box shopping centers, which is kind of what this site would be designated for, as C1 and an acreage of that. Really, and then the comp plan and then really current commercial trends are going towards those corridors with high visibility. So that's focusing most of your commercial development on the 23rd and 23rd and 25th. I think it's 35th. Excuse me, 35th actually, which would be those 2 major corridors coming down. This multifamily would help kind of drive some of those rooftops, which then put more traffic on those thoroughfares, than driving some more of that commercial on those. And then the other thing is that we wanted to point out is there's about 77 acres of undeveloped commercial property within a mile of this site, not including the 17.5 acres of this site. And it's kind of broken down to 30 acres of C1, 5 acres of C2, and then 42 acres of C3. So you have a range of available commercial development there existing. And then the other comp plan part that we really picked up on was this transitional housing, where this housing would be able to provide some starter housing for people, and then they would be able to move into some of the adjacent neighborhoods as they were ready to go into a single family development. So you can kind of form that community bond and then stay in the area there. You're familiar with your services and some of the residents around you. And then Savannah actually covered the rest of the reasons, the technical criterias. We did not receive any comments back from any of the referral agencies that were in any way indicating that they have a problem with the rezoning. So we feel like everybody has kind of had the opportunity to weigh in and didn't have any concerns on that. The utilities are adjacent to the site in the streets around there. The streets around the site are completely constructed. So we would it's really an infill development, which is also supported by the comp plan. And then Savannah did briefly touch about the oil and gas. There was a well there. It was the Dwell well number 2. It started production in 1986, and then it was abandoned in July of 2017. And we are getting the required documentation from the COGCC to show that was all abandoned clearly. I'm happy to answer any question. Well, we do have a concept plan that would look at the building. It would be their 24-unit multifamily buildings. Now, I will tell you that this is a concept plan. We're actually working on vetting out exactly how everything's working right now, so don't get too attached to exactly how this looks. There'll be some changes for sure, but just kind of showing the carrying capacity of the site and what we're intending there. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have now or at a later date. Okay. Anything now?
We'll go to the public comment, and then we might come back to you for some questions. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak in support of this issue? Seeing none, is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak in opposition of this issue? Did you have anything else you'd like to add, Mr. Williams?
No.
Council, do we have questions for our staff or for Mr. Williamson?
No questions at this time.
No.
Move forward.
I will close the public hearing and ask for council discussion.
Well, one thing I want to say is I'm kind of disappointed that we haven't had a quorum in the last couple of planning commission meetings. I know they're a valuable asset to help us make decisions as a council about rezoning efforts, and I would like to encourage the public, I know, to get involved in the boards and commissions that we have. They are a great tool and assets to help us make decisions about commercial use, residential use, and chains of zoning. So I like to see a little bit more participation from people and you know, so we don't have to bypass it, come straight to council. On that note, I'm very in favor of this project. It's always great to see new development coming into the community, and I am looking forward to approving this.
Other discussion?
I am also concerned about the lack of quorum at these two planning commission meetings, and I'm hoping that we're looking at checking with those people that are currently on the volunteer for this and see if they can fulfill their obligation. And if not, we need to try to find some other people to fill those positions. I also received at lunch several comments regarding people coming into Evans, and at least I know at least one of the person does live in my ward over on the east side of town, and they were saying that Evans needs to stop all this development, and I was totally shocked by this comment that they need to make a decision like Boulder did to limit development. And I don't necessarily agree with that, but I thought that since I invited the gentleman to come to council and he's not here, I'd bring that up. And there was generally quite a few more people that agreed with that comment. But I do feel that this should not be zoned as a commercial property anymore. I would rather see it go to R1, but I guess we have to take what we can get.
Thank you, Fred. Let me just touch on the planning commission real quick. I know either myself or the gentleman there, we're reaching out to all the people on the planning commission and trying to make sure that people are going to be at the meetings. If they can't be, that we'll look for a few replacements there. So we are working on getting that. As far as this project goes, I think it's a great project. It fits right with what's there. It's just a continuation on the existing Crescent Cove. I think it's going to be a nice addition to the city of Evans, and I am in favor of it.
I'm also in favor. I'm excited actually to have, you all expand, but not only that, it also expands our, it diversifies our housing opportunities for our residents, which is great. Because not everyone can get into a single family home, but it gives the opportunity for that transition, as you mentioned, which I am greatly happy that that's happening. Thank you.
Yeah, I second that. I think that my husband and I regularly discuss if we had to be buying a single family home now, how much different that picture would be. So providing opportunities to younger families and those on an income that would impede on purchasing a home, I think is fantastic. I think it's a great location, and I'm excited about the project.
Speaking of Crescent Cove Apartments, and you mentioning that, when we first moved to Evans, that's where we lived, Crescent Cove Apartments. So, and we transitioned from Crescent Cove and bought our house. So, I mean, it's a great transition opportunity. It's a great community, and it's managed very well over there as well.
And I can speak on behalf of traffic because I live in North Point, and there, from the apartment complex, there's no like traffic that you'd think that would increase. I mean, it flows well. So the expansion, I am not worried about an increase in traffic just because everyone seems to find their way through other access points. So.
Yeah. That was one of the other issues that was mentioned about Evans, was the increase in traffic everywhere. And the condition of the roads, which I said, well, we don't have the money to fix them.
You know, it would bring more money.
Yeah.
I do want to make a side note, I am in favor of this with the conditions
Yes.
of the approval.
Agreed.
Just wanted to put that out there.
I second that.
Any other comments? Not, I'd entertain a motion.
I move to approve ordinance number 696-19 as proposed with conditions of approval.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve ordinance number 696-19 as proposed with the conditions of approval. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Thank you for being here tonight. Next item, item B, consideration of award of bid 2019 asphalt reconstruction projects. We'll hear from staff.
Thank you, Mayor. This is an annual program we fund when we're able, this is for asphalt reconstruction, street projects, where the road is really beyond our traditional pavement management strategies. This is where we essentially need to rebuild the streets in a few places, and there are some locations in town where staff has looked at them, and these are really the highest priorities with the funding that we have. I will turn it over to Assistant City Manager Randy Reedy to just summarize the program and the process that we use to recommend the contractor for you this evening, and we'll ask for your consideration of an awarded bid concluding the presentation.
Thank you. Yes, what's before you is consideration of this bid award. The apparent low bidder, and it's been vetted pretty considerably, is at Don Keene Construction. This is for reconstruction of two roadways that are really beyond repair. The funding for these would come out of $350,000 is set aside for street maintenance that are projects that don't fall within the parameters of what we'd call a consistent pavement management program. The two projects included in this proposed bid are two streets, one at the ridge at Prairie View, Phlox Lane, and there's a second one in Grapevine Hollow, Corvina Court, that due to the timing of construction, the number of street cuts and patches that these streets have undergone over the last several years are really in very poor shape. So what this approval of this bid would do would be to allow the reconstruction of these streets, allow the removal of the subsurface, coming in with better material there, would be compacted well, and then repaved on top of that. We have, as you're aware, a substantial chip sealing, paving, crack sealing program. You've already approved, and the work has been done for the crack sealing, but these streets are beyond that. They've received some of that treatment in years past. It has just not held up. So, as a portion of the overall street management and maintenance program, we are recommending approval of this this contract. It would be for an amount of $145,000 and about a $30,000 contingency for unforeseen events on either of these streets.
You want to comment on the low bidder? And
Yes, I did. It's Don Keene Construction, Northern Colorado based, and a company that Evans is familiar with. They were the lowest of the six bidders, and are prepared to begin the work shortly here as we get into the summer.
It looks to me that asphalt specialties is
Excellent.
lower.
Lower
Yeah.
Right.
by 700.
Yeah, the base bid amount was what we were awarding this on primarily. That was the street that we knew that we needed to get done. Above all, that's Corvina Court. As you can see, they're substantially below asphalt specialties, and about $752 all in, about less than one half of 1% difference between those two. Due to the familiarity that the city has with Don Keene, we are recommending them to go forward.
Questions of staff?
What other projects have they done?
You know, I do not have that before me. I'd be happy to get back to you on that with that information.
So you're looking at the base bid amount, not the added alternate number one. You're going off of the base bid amount versus Is that how you?
Correct.
Because I'm looking at the total, so we have 145,000, then 144. The asphalt specialties, yes, is higher in the base bid amount, but the alternate number one is lower, and it's.
Right. This was bid as a base bid for Covina Court, which is the highest priority and in the worst shape, with ad alternate number one, Phlox Lane, and then there was an ad alternate number two that we are not recommending that we proceed with at this time, which was Stagecoach in Ashcroft Heights. Significantly more, $250,000. It's a project we'd like to revisit with you for next year. And the prices for that, for those ad alternates tended to bounce around. But the vendors were all aware, the potential bidders were aware that we'd be basing the highest consideration on the base bid because that was the project we considered the highest priority.
All right, thank you.
Other questions of staff?
Everyone,
Comment?
comments? Yeah, I'm in agreement with it.
If there are no other questions or comments, I'd entertain a motion.
I move to award the 2019 asphalt reconstruction project contract to Don King, I believe, Construction Incorporated, and to authorize the mayor's signature on an agreement in the amount not to exceed $175,000.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to award the 2019 asphalt reconstruction project contract to Don King Construction, Inc., and to authorize the mayor's signature on an agreement in the amount not to exceed $175,000. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item, item C, consideration of resolution number 12-2019, a resolution approving the intergovernmental agreement with Weld County use of jail facilities. We'll hear from staff.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll just do a quick introduction of the item, and this is an ongoing agreement that we have. Turn it over quickly to our Assistant City Attorney, Dan Krob, to present the item.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. As Jim said, this is just really an annual update of the agreement we've had with Weld County for the past several years. No real changes to content in it. It's just subject to annual appropriation thanks to Tabor concerns. And if you have any questions, I'm free to answer.
Thank you, sir. Questions of our city attorney?
I do have just a quick question. So it says in parentheses that the total cost is $45.32 for jail services for 100 offenders. Is that 100 offenders all at once if we're in there, or throughout the year? How is that defined as 100 offenders?
So that's 100 total offenders that were in jail. Some of them are in there for 2 days, some of them in there for a week. I don't have it broken down in front of me. I can certainly get you those numbers of the average stay per offender or what you want. Really, this is based on a per day, per inmate cost, and it's a slight increase based on inflation.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Other questions of staff? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion.
I move to approve or adopt rather resolution number 12-2019.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to adopt resolution number 12-2019. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Item 9, reports, city manager.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have 2 items tonight. First, I'll ask Allison Moaning to stand if she will, please. Very pleased to introduce Allison to you this evening. She is our new Economic Development Manager. A few words about Allison. She holds a Master of Public Administration degree from Wichita State University. She is originally from Kansas. After working for a time as the communications coordinator in the Sedgwick County Manager's Office, she moved into the economic development field in about 2002 as she moved into the role of Director of Economic Development for the city of Derby, Kansas, which is a suburb of Wichita, approximately similar size to Evans. She had a lot of success there with retail developers, attracting national brands like Lowe's and Kohl's and Target, Hampton Inn, PetSmart, as are a few of the projects that she helped to bring to Derby. So that's important experience for us. She also then moved to the Washington, D.C. area in 2014 with her family, where She worked in an economic development corporation very similar to upstate Colorado, of which the city of Evans is a member. They focus a lot on primary employers and helping to revitalize various areas within a county, and she gained a lot of that experience. Interestingly, she's now, her family has lived in Germany for the past couple of years with, I believe, a military-related stay, and they're moving back to the area this summer, and we're very fortunate to have Allison interested in our community. She's been here a little more than a week, and she's dived in full force and is starting to meet people and kind of engage in our projects. So with that, you can just wave, and I'm sure you'll have a chance to meet folks later, but we're very glad to have Allison on board.
Willkommen.
Welcome, thank you.
Sprechen Deutsch?
Finally, Mayor, just have an update.
Ich spreche Sie Deutsch ein bisschen.
Ja.
Ja. Ja.
Update on the city council vacancy that we have. We do have a number of applications, which is great, from Ward 2 for our vacant seat. We will be, if the council can make just a moment after the meeting tonight, we do need to identify a date where council is available for some interviews. So we'll be trying to catch up with each of you after the meeting tonight to see if there's a date that can work for the group, so we can move as promptly as we can through some interviews and then to hopefully seating that position very soon. That's all I have tonight, Mayor.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
City Attorney.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. All I have for you tonight is a quick update on the Advantage Bank EQR litigation, and I'll give that to you in executive session.
Next item on the agenda is audience participation. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to address City Council on any item? None. Item 11, executive session.
I move to go into executive session to determine positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiations, developing strategy for negotiations, and instructing negotiations involving the city's pending litigation pursuant to CRS 24-6-402, Section 4, subsections B and E.
I second.
I have a motion and a second to go into executive session. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Thank you all very much for being here tonight. Have a great evening.
Doing your job. Double click.
Double clicks.
Time. Okay.
Where did you get all this information from? That contest.
Oh, so she can one meetup.
Do you go in there and say, hey, I'm city council member? And learn where I go, because that's where my son and I were gonna go, and we saw the car and turned around and went to like wing check instead. I could have found out all this information. Are you getting sick or are you getting over being sick? Yeah.
There's no one else is on. Do you know if the video thing is on?
It's not. Thank you.